Well, this is another devastating blow for the exhibitions, the events and entertainment industry due to COVID-19. The ban on public gatherings has meant that during 2020 and now 2021, the Ticketpro Dome has been unable to operate, forcing it to close its doors. The Ticketpro Dome solidified global recognition with companies and promoters throughout several industries and will be remembered as an iconic venue across the events, exhibitions and entertainment sectors. It opened on the 8th of April 1998 with a concert by Diana Ross, attended by over 15,000 people, with a special guest appearance by the late former President Nelson Mandela. Over the years, the venue has played host to top international and local music artists. Now, Carol Weaving, Managing Director, RX Africa, Justine van Wyk, the South African Events Council, and Projeni, the South African Events Council, join us now this morning to share more on how this will affect the exhibition and the entertainment industry. A very good morning to you three. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Morning, Simpiwe.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, Carol, I'll start with you. The Dome has been the venue to host so many international acts and local acts as well. So what led to this discussion?
I think, as you rightly say, the ban on public gatherings has obviously meant that the venues and obviously the industry, the bigger picture industry actually, hasn't been able to operate throughout 2020 and throughout 2021. Obviously, the overheads on a venue like the Dome are very costly. And even though the ban said you can run an event for 100 people or 250 people, it's just not sustainable. So we've just not been able to operate at all, which is a real pity, especially when you consider some of the shopping malls can open. You know, we really believe that we should have been able to open, obviously with safe protocols observed. So, you know, I think it's really a financial situation from Sasol Pension Fund. We're really the managing agent. And then, of course, Sasol Pension Fund have now sold the Ticketpro Dome as of, I think it's the 8th of September, to We Buy Cars. So it's a very sad day indeed and a very sad week for our industry.
Now, Projeni, I know that you tried hosting online exhibitions and all, but how did you manage to survive last year?
Well, not everybody did. That's the tragedy of it all, because the nature of our business is face-to-face, and that's where it is most impactful. Online events are great, but, you know, there's lots of challenges that come with that. And I think South Africa has taken on slowly with online. You know, it's not, we used to face-to-face, we used to that human interaction. And in terms of exhibitions, that's what drives business. And that's why we are in the business of exhibitions, because face-to-face interaction is what, gives you that return on investment when you participate in our exhibitions. Doing it online, is very impersonal. So exhibitions have struggled to go online, and the cost of going online as well is quite exorbitant without the same returns. So it's a difficult situation for all industry organizers.
Yeah, Justin, has the government not been able to help fund the venue?
No, I mean, the only funding we've had for the arts so far has been the TERS benefit, and there was a 300 million rand economic stimulus package that unfortunately was somewhat mismanaged by the National Arts Council that was granted to it in the presidential stimulus package. There have also been some pockets of financial assistance from the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture directly for artists, but certainly for those in the business of events, venues, promoters, festivals, etc., there's been very little financial support.
Okay. Now, Carol, please share with us on how the venue would generally keep afloat. I know that you had concerts, exhibitions, etc., but primarily, how did it survive?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, you have a naming sponsor, which obviously is the Ticketpro Dome at the moment. You have a combination. In fact, 50% of our business was exhibitions, some trade shows, some consumer shows. And the trade shows have a huge economic impact. And if you look at the entire industry, the cultural industry, it was 74 billion direct to, the economic benefit. And of course, that's just direct. Mm-hmm. Indirect is obviously the amount of deals that are written at some of these trade shows. So we had a combination of trade shows and consumer shows. Trade shows are really the B2B shows where deals are made and deals are written. And it could be in energy, it could be in technology, whatever. And then on the consumer shows, you get gaming, you get baby shows, you get a combination of consumer events. But 50% was really those trade shows and exhibitions, and the balance were live events. So concerts, Disney, on ice, and all of the wonderful events that we've had at the Dome over the last 23 years, because obviously that's how long we've been managing it. And it's been a profitable venue. It's literally, because of the pandemic, all of a sudden, there is no profit anymore, of course. It's just all about the losses in 2020 and 21. However, we, as a company, as Reed Africa, we did have communicable disease insurance last year. So that's how we stayed afloat. So that was great. But this year, you can't get that insurance 2 years in a row, sadly. So that's why we found ourselves in the position we're in.
I mean, it's so sad, man. I've been to the Dome so many times, and all those memories now up in smoke. Now, Projeni, were there no private investors or brands willing to take up the venue? Hi, Projeni.
Sorry, I think that's a question for Carol.
I think, we did have a couple of offers, and, it was really Sasol Pension Fund's decision. We tried really, really hard from an entertainment industry perspective. I mean, of course, we wanted to keep the Dome exactly as it is, and for the benefit of all of South Africa. It's a landmark, and there's an emotional attachment to the Dome, and exactly like you said, memories and experiences we've had. So, we did have one or two private investors. We did approach. But I think, I don't know whether We Buy Cars had a better deal with Sasol Pension Fund. But unfortunately, we're now looking at a showroom. You never know. Maybe we can persuade We Buy Cars to move out their cars for a weekend while we have a nice international concert. So I'm being a bit cheeky, but you never know. And we'll certainly give that a go and try.
When does it officially close, Carol?
9th of September.
Okay. Now, Justin, now that the biggest venue has closed, where will you be hosting exhibitions in and around Johannesburg? I mean, what kind of impact will it have on the entertainment and exhibition industry as a whole?
Well, it's very significant. South Africa is a long-haul destination for a lot of international tours and exhibitions and things like that. So coming all this way to South Africa, it's not like Europe where you've got 27 states that you can tour with multiple cities in each one. When you come to South Africa, you've got Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town. Those are your three major metros that host events. So without Johannesburg, and let me just say, the Ticketpro Dome was the only large arena, in other words, an arena with more than 12,000 capacity here in South Africa. And without Johannesburg as part of that portfolio, I fear that South Africa is going to lose out on a lot of tours. That's the reality. It's the economic capital of South Africa and certainly of Africa to a large extent. And without that, there simply is no other venue. There is your next size is a theatre at 1,800 capacity, and if you're in the exhibitions business, then your options would be Gallagher Estate and to some extent the Sandton Convention Centre. But that's very small. So for the large events, the events that have the big economic impact that put South Africa on the map, we would definitely in the short term, we're going to lose out on those sort of events happening in our country as a whole.
And do you think this closure could have been avoided? If so, how so?
Well, look, I mean, that's a difficult question. I mean, yes, we would have hoped that Sasol Pension Fund would entertain the offers from the entertainment business. They have their own reasons why they haven't. But how could we have done otherwise with a pandemic? Unfortunately, every time there's a lockdown, gatherings are restricted, and there's no insurance available for our industry for communicable diseases. It was pulled as early as Jan 2020, so you simply cannot host those events. So what could the government have done differently? Well, it's a difficult question. I mean, we would have hoped we could open events with rapid testing. We would have hoped that we could have some sort of process where if you can prove your vaccination, you can be allowed into the event. We are seeing that in other countries like the United Kingdom and the United States are doing that. We hope that that's where we will get with our government and our country. But unfortunately, this has just come at a really bad time in the midst of the third wave.
Yeah, and speaking of vaccination, Projeni, I mean, with the current vaccination process slowly picking up, don't you think the venue could have survived because the industry would also start picking up? Could it have had it waited until then?
Absolutely. But for me, government could have done something much earlier about this. The industry didn't need a blanket shutdown. Unfortunately, all events were bundled into one. There are many kinds of events, right? As Carol mentioned, as Justin mentioned, you've got exhibitions, you've got conferences, you've got concerts, and they all have different purposes at different times. And they have different size capacities as well and can operate at different capacities. So when there was a blanket shutdown of the industry as a whole, it affected our entire ecosystem in terms of venues and suppliers to all our events as well. Now, a business exhibition, for example, is basically a retail environment. It's a pop-up shop where people get to buy and sell goods, like a retail environment, like a shopping mall. So those kind of events could have started operating. There is no gathering of people because there's flow of people into and out of a shopping mall, and the same with an exhibition. So if some events like exhibitions, like conferences, could start happening, smaller concerts, at least the industry could operate and you wouldn't get this kind of closure happening. And if this continues and we're not allowed to operate in a phased approach with different events happening at different times, then we will start seeing more venues and more suppliers closing down, and that will shut down our industry for a longer time.
All right, Projeni, Carol and Justin, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it is with a heavy heart that RX Venue Management announces that after 20 years of being the management company of South Africa's largest multipurpose indoor arena, the Ticketpro Dome has now been sold.